I wanted to re-engage with Russia in a strategic dialogue as soon as I was elected 2017. Remember, I was attacked on my social networks during my campaign by Russia. It's been shown. And yet, I bring President Putin in June 2017, Judy by the way, for a press conference. And then I re-engage with him. And I think that today, among the Western leaders, I am the one who has spent the most hours of discussion with President Putin. But he betrayed that trust. But throughout this period, many countries reproached me for having this dialogue. Germany was like me, Chancellor Merkel, share this vision. But Poland, the Baltic countries, several European countries said, no, this is not true. You'll see, he's going to betray you, we know him. Because they had been, in recent history, sometimes invaded by Russia. So there is a very strong awareness among Europeans of a Russian threat, make no mistake. And sometimes stronger than in France, especially in Europe, on this front, is what I showed you earlier and in Northern Europe. The second thing is that once we reconverged from 2022, I fought by saying we must go further. We must strengthen this European pillar of NATO. This is called the Versailles Agenda, strategic, technological, economic, and military autonomy. But there, we had a dilemma in many countries, and sometimes the same ones. And that's what you have to understand, that's what's changing, is that many of these countries, in fact, they didn't trust Europe so much to protect them, for a simple reason. It's that between 1945 and 1947, we had let them down, the famous Iron Curtain, and that we protected Western Europe, and then the Iron Curtain fell, and the Soviet Union took them. And after 1990, they turned to the United States of America. And so for many of these countries in Europe, security is equal to the United States of America. And there is a disturbance at the moment when I am talking to you. And this disorder, it is related to what? A lot of speeches from American leaders who say we don't know if we're going to stay committed in Europe as strongly, because we have other priorities. Troubles because, and I told them about the last few years, and we shouldn't judge. But the Americans have been telling us for 15 years that our priority is us, then our priority is China. And regardless of the administration. And look at Syria in 2/3, look at Afghanistan in 2020-2021. Look, etc., etc. Whatever the administration or the color, the Americans told us your safety or that of your neighborhood, it is no longer our priority. We have to be clear-headed. This is no offense. They tell us we want you to take on more burdens. That, it was difficult to pass at some. But there is a wake-up call here. And the third thing is that there are some who are sometimes even threatened in their soil. I'll take an example, this is Denmark. Denmark is a country headed today by my friend Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. This is a country that, historically, even a few years ago, had what is called an opt-out, that is to say it said, it is not with Europe that I am looking at defense, it is with NATO. So the defense was not in the subjects that they had put, that they wanted to watch, among other things. This is a country, when we were discussing, and who said, we are committed, we are very European, but our security is NATO. Well, they held a referendum on defense in order to change their things precisely and become more European again in terms of defense after 2022. And there, a few weeks ago, they learned that the United States wanted to recover Greenland, which is a Danish territory. And they continued the same reading of the game. The Danish Prime Minister, with a lot of pragmatism, voluntarism and courage, located where she is. That is to say a few hundred kilometers from Kaliningrad. Also not very far from where Russian and Baltic submarines operate or other. She said, starting this year, I am massively increasing my budget. I am making reforms to save money on other policies and redeploy in defense. I am creating an emergency fund of more than 10 billion euros, and they are going up completely. And we are hand in hand with Denmark. And so I am not at all alone, on the contrary. Today, you have a European strategic awakening. And so the key for us is to keep unity, and it is to convert this European strategic awakening into a decision. And I'm obsessed with it. We Europeans must decide quickly. And so this strategic awakening, which must lead us to decide on a massive defense plan and massive investments in Europe, and take these strategic decisions in the coming weeks, and also decide on an acceleration on the economic and technological level, because it is also our independence, and that we need to wake up, and that we Europeans need to be stronger to carry all this. I have S. Baston on Twitter. And about France, when are you talking about it? So hello S. Baston. Since just now I've been talking only about France. And I'm going to send you instead because we don't necessarily know each other, but I thank you for this tutorial, which is undoubtedly friendly. France is what I've been talking about since the beginning. When I talk about nuclear deterrence, when I talk about our territory, when I talk about our security, that's us. And France, I invite you to look at a map. It's not complicated to understand. France is not an island. You see, if we look at this just to take back my card from earlier. And so if there's a problem that starts to happen there, you see, it comes quickly. And I said it a few months ago, Strasbourg, Ukraine is about 1,500 kilometers. It's not very far. So there are many people like you who thought that France should be taken care of first of all, and not take care of the regimes that were expansionist in Europe in the 30s, and who basically said we can let go of the annexed territories. All this will not come to us. They had a funny awakening in June 40, it didn't last long. This is not right. I am not comparing today's Russia with Germany of the 1930s. Finally, my lucidity still leads me to look at Russia as it is. It is a dangerous military power that has become imperialist. So since just now, when I have been talking to you about security, defense, and when I tell you that in France we are under attack from an informational point of view, when I tell you that in France we are being attacked every week from a cyber point of view by Russia, when I tell you that in France we are being attacked on our interests, endangering our military and our civilians in Africa, when I tell you that our planes are threatened, that our submarines are threatened, it is France that I am talking about. It is your soldiers, and it may be your children if you have any. So I'm talking about France. In this matter, no false nationalism, because it is often, in reality, the speech of defeatism. And I know this speech. So then I started on Twitter. Why help Ukraine as a priority when the purchasing power of the French is in crisis? First of all, I know that there are many French families today, for whom the end of the month is very difficult, for whom life is hard. And I don't esteem myself. I have done everything to fight for it. By the way, I invite you to look at the statistics. France is the European country where the purchasing power for 2017 has been the most preserved, or even for certain categories, has increased the most. And for the middle-class French in particular, we protected him the most than the others against COVID or in times of inflation, and we spent a lot of money on it. The same people reproaching me for having spent too much money on the purchasing power of the French. Sometimes, you know, you have to sit still. But I take it, we protected the purchasing power. Simply, you have to make choices. The purchasing power of the French is the price of life and wages. The employing state has taken strong decisions. I decided myself, in my mandates, to increase our teachers, to increase our workers, our caregivers in the hospital, as they had not been increased for decades. And I accept this choice. I decided to rehire policemen and gendarmes, military personnel. I accept this choice. But salaries, it is not the state that makes them, it is the companies, it is the social dialogue. And I rather lightened these burdens in my first mandate by transferring part of the unemployment contributions to the CSE and lowering taxes to be able to relaunch. Moreover, we have created 2 million jobs. But so it's the salaries after the key. And the salaries, it depends on what? Our competitiveness, our ability to conquer markets, our industrial strength. So we must keep a supply policy, and then we must have a good social dialogue that allows wages to be pursued. But this is not the state. And I'm not going to put it in salaries, it is already the country that supports the most salaries. At the minimum wage level in Europe, with what is precisely called this activity bonus that we have increased, I remind you. It was one of my commitments to get out of the yellow vest crisis. Then on the other side, it's the prices. Prices, we have been one of the countries that has protected the most in the face of the rise of energy. It is falling. We are one of the countries that is fighting the most to try to protect, to lower its prices. But then, again, it's economic life. So we are doing everything to help with purchasing power. We have taken a lot of decisions, but you have to be aware of it. One of the countries that has protected purchasing power the most. Now, what is the battle for purchasing power? This is the battle against unemployment. This is the battle for improving wages, and therefore taking charge of our economy. This is the battle for industrialization. This is the battle for activity. This is the heart of the battle in which the nation must be engaged. But at the moment when I am speaking to you, given the risk that this represents, the money that we are putting into help, To help Ukraine resist is a national security issue because if Ukraine collapsed, it is a strategic victory for Russia. But above all, it would be the beginning of a forward march. Russia is already destabilizing Moldova, which is neighboring, and Russia is already manipulating the elections in Romania, which is right next door. Do you think he would stop on such a good way, you? So me, I don't want to be weak. I don't want us to be weak. So France has helped, but I want to look at the figures. We have also, in terms of the amount invested, helped less than our German neighbors. It is necessary to have the lucidity and the humility to say it. But we are right to help Ukraine because we defend our security by doing this. Ukraine, in a way, is at the forefront of our collective security. And we are right to commit to what I said there, that there is more security for us and more security in Europe. That's it. I'm trying to tell you frankly how I see things. I have Laura on TikTok who writes to me, "Good evening. What do you think of the cancellation of the Romanian presidential elections?" Thank you, Laura, for the question. That's what I was saying earlier. So it was an unprecedented, very serious decision, which, moreover, upset Romania, which was taken by the Romanian Supreme Court. This is not a decision in question. It is his Supreme Court that is there. Judges who made this decision. This is extremely serious, and it is unprecedented, and it is in the European Union. What's the reason for this? This is due to the fact that the Supreme Court has identified the fact that, massively, Russia, through proxies, so-called, that is to say intermediate cannons, fake accounts, relays, had manipulated these elections with moreover the massive use of certain social networks and had in fact pushed, even paid for votes, transformed, completely modified the sincerity of the vote. That's what she said. And so when the election is insincere, she was forced to cancel after the first round, which is unprecedented. But it shows what I was telling you earlier, which is that our democratic systems actually thought they were very solid forever. They have a vulnerability. This is because today we are informed on social networks that can be manipulated by propaganda on a very large scale and in a way. The authoritarian powers that have developed these capabilities are better armed than we are. And that's part of the conflict. That's why we have to provide answers during these elections. And we have to be careful. There is a kind of false speech that is coming in there, which is the defense of free speech. I was hearing from the Vice President Vance, with whom I had a very fruitful exchange when he came to Paris, which was very interesting. We had a good exchange, quite cordial. He said he was shocked by this decision. For me, what shocked me was not the decision of a Supreme Court. I am not going to comment on the decisions of the American Supreme Court or on the British, as I think we have not commented on the decisions of the Romanian Supreme Court. For me, what shocks me is that Russia comes to interfere massively and distort the sincerity of suffrage in Romania. So we have to be careful. If free speech is in a way the fact that we can say anything and everything, that we can beat people up on social networks for no reason, that we can make the worst anti-Semitic and racist speeches, that we can manipulate information en masse if we are strong. It's not called freedom of expression, it's not true. And above all these people forget to say that freedom of expression, when it comes to social networks, it presupposes that we have a little transparency on the algorithms. And that's what bothers me. You are all going to do it tonight. Maybe those who are live, all those who will watch after this video, they will have tips. They will scroll on their network. Who makes me have one video after another? It's not my choice. I'm not the one who's going to choose the video afterwards. There's someone pushing me the video that I'm going to have by following. Me, I have seen the changes in the videos that I had on some networks since they changed ownership. But who draws from this? What's that behind there? What is this invisible hand? It's called an algorithm. Is it transparent? Do I know the rules? Do I know the choices of this algorithm? No. The algorithm, he's playing politics. Well, I'm sorry, but if we want to be strong democracies, we might as well 20. We must know how to face and block the propaganda of enemy countries that manipulate our elections. But we must also put transparency back into the algorithms, and let's say to ourselves, are they distorted or not? That's the key. So, I'm looking, do I have any other questions? You can send me some. I still have a good quarter of an hour. Then I have to go and call President Zelensky, so you can send me some. I have Agnes on Facebook who asks me, do we really have the financial and human resources to ensure our own safety? So Agnes, yes, and it's already the case. I'll be honest with you. That is to say that France, it has a solid army, I told you, it is the most efficient army in Europe, for sure. And we have invested a lot. First of all, we made historical choices for our safety. We have acquired the nuclear deterrent, which was a historical choice made after the war, which has been consolidated generation after generation, which was a human investment of unprecedented skills and financial of the nation. Then we have a complete army, that is to say that we know how to defend ourselves in the air, on land, at sea, under the seas. And we have military capabilities in all areas where we are autonomous. That is to say that either we produce them ourselves, or we produce them with partners, but we are not dependent on the choices of these partners in all categories. And that is a very great strength that very few others have, almost none in Europe. And we also invested heavily, because I didn't wait for everything that happened. As early as 2017, I launched a strategic review. We made the decisions, then we passed a military programming law that reinvested. When we had been in the process of disinvesting for about 15 years, and which then had a second takeover. Second military programming law reinvests again. This means that with the two military programming laws that I have prepared, that Parliament has voted on, which are for the first time in decades respected at the euro, we will have doubled the budget of our armies. So yes, we are in a situation, but we will have to go further. We are going to have to go further because the threat is changing, because we have an escalation of the capabilities of our main opponents, and because we are going to have a European organization to build. And then, as I also tell you, the threat now, it is going to other fields, and therefore, we must invest in human, financial and technical terms to face destabilizations by artificial intelligence, by cyber, by social networks. And that's a very big investment by the nation, but we can afford it. And then, next to that, we're going to have to make choices, and I'll bear them out. I'll try to explain them. But these are choices between the short term and the future of the nation. Our elders, our parents, our grandparents, they were led to make choices. I mean, at the time of the question earlier, we could have said to General de Gaulle, all the billions that you are putting into the nuclear deterrent, and your neighbors are not putting them, why don't you put them into the purchasing power of the French? You are a bad patriot. We are lucky to have a General de Gaulle who has invested in nuclear deterrence and who has not invested in the short term. And we invest a lot. We are one of the countries in Europe that has the largest public expenditure, but we invest a lot. A lot to correct, to support in operation. We have to invest more to prepare for the future. And this is from education to higher education, research, technological independence, security, defense, climate. All this is investment expenses for the future, and I will also put health and our youth there. And so we have to move a little maybe what we are spending to put it on the right topics. Then I have THO Udalist on Twitter who puts could we consider an extension of the French nuclear deterrent to the member countries of the European Union? That's a very complicated, very technical question. In fact, since General de Gaulle, and reiterated each time by all my predecessors, it has always been said that what is called the vital interests of the nation is what makes the president may be led to trigger the use of nuclear weapons. It is that the president is looking at whether the vital interests of the nation are at stake or had a European dimension. And so our doctrine, it has an ambiguity and it must keep this ambiguity. That's why I'm not going to answer much more precisely, because this ambiguity, it creates deterrence. Well, since in fact always, the French nuclear deterrent, she said, I will also look at my neighbors, and I will not exclude them from the vital interests of the nation. And General de Gaulle said so from the very beginning, because, contrary to what I heard earlier, General de Gaulle, from the very beginning, he knew that France could not defend its security alone, and that it could only do so united with a continent. So yes, after that, we will have a discussion in the coming months and years with several partners to then see if we need to increase, densify this solidarity, and how. I have a question from Saturnio on TikTok. Will Ukraine join the European Union? In any case, we accepted his application, we started opening the books, and I think we must allow him to continue this path. And I think that at the moment when Ukraine is at war and resists and loses every day, as I told you, its children to defend its territory, no one has the right to say Ukraine has no right to return to the European Union, or Ukraine has no right to return to NATO. It will be part of the peace negotiation, it will be part of the rest. Then I got a picture of Itrine on Facebook. What can we do concretely as a patriotic citizen to support France in the face of this crisis? Will the state launch, will it launch a bank passbook to support the defense? First of all, I'm going to say thank you for this question, and basically, this is exactly one of the issues tonight for me. I would like to convince you that you have a role to play in this moment, in this era in which we are entering. And that perhaps in our country, where for several years we had become accustomed to wondering what the government could do for us. And it does a lot, and I will tell you, we are one of the countries where the government does the most at all ages of life. We are entering a time when each of us must ask ourselves what we can do for the French nation and the Republic. And deep down, I need you. And so I need you. Perhaps we will launch savings products and, indeed, appeal to the nation to finance certain programs. I'm not ruling it out. And so I'm going to coordinate with some European neighbors, but I'm not ruling it out. And I think that's a very good idea, what you're saying there. But I also need you right away in more concrete terms, explaining, carrying the awareness that you have of the challenge. Maybe I need you, if you're ready, on the way back to the reserve. We have launched a program, a reserve precisely, either with our armies or with our police, our gendarmerie or other. It is to put your skills at the service of our armies, put your skills at the service of this mission of defense and national security. And to say if you are a computer scientist, I will help you on the networks if you are. We all have skills. You have skills that are important for the nation. And they are not just in the context of your professions. They are so because in all registers, we need new skills to strengthen our ability to defend ourselves, and therefore go to the reserve. And then I will come back to you in the coming weeks to mobilize you, if I may say so, on various registers. I have on TikTok who says why I helped Ukraine more than Mayotte, French department. So no, first of all it's not true. I can tell you that, and this is normal. Ukraine is being helped a lot more, and we have helped it a lot more through all these programs. It is a department, and therefore, we also have social policies every day with Mayotte. And I am thinking of our compatriots Mayas and Ma, who faced this terrible cyclone at the end of last year, are still fighting today in this phase of stabilization and reconstruction. We must not oppose things at all. We fought, and we helped our compatriots in St. Martin, in St. Barthélemy, when they had the terrible cyclone Irma 7 years ago now. We fight when we have compatriots who are having difficult times, precisely climatic disasters in all territories. And we fight for our compatriots in Mayotte, as we also do for all our compatriots or our peasants when they have a climatic hazard. And I think that we should not oppose things. We do both at the same time, as the other would say. But we must not oppose one to the other, and there is no money that we would have put to Ukraine that would not have gone to Mayotte. It would be wrong to say it. I found Benjamin on YouTube who asks me, in view of the risk that Russia represents for Europe, shouldn't we do the same as Poland? With almost 5% of the gross domestic product for defense. Tough but necessary budget choices have to be made now. It's okay, it's a good question, Benjamin. It's very strong, and obviously it's one of the questions I ask myself. Poland, you can see it there. I'm not telling you everyone, it's much closer. It is on the border with Belarus, and Russia has deployed very close military personnel. And especially a lot of missiles that threaten Polish territory. So she's at the forefront. So all the countries that are also at the forefront, they spend 4, 5, sometimes more % of their gross domestic products. When we are at 2%, I remind you, we were much less in 2017. Anyway, we're going to have to go upstairs. So, we will have to increase the national share, but we will also have to increase the European share. So that's what we have to look at to dose the effort. And besides, we were at such a figure in the 60s, 70s, and in the 80s. That is to say, all the time there was the Cold War. And what I would like to tell you is that, basically, we have forgotten a little about that time, but there have been peace dividends. As I was saying earlier, we had invested, we were in an order that had stabilized. Then there was the fall of the wall, and everyone thought that we were in a free, open, peaceful world. And we invested a lot less on our defense. A lot of countries have gone down a lot. Sometimes, we also closed bases and went down. It's over. And so, today, we're going to have to reinvest. We started doing it since 2017. I welcome that. Well, I don't think so. France has made the right strategic choices. She did them before many others in Europe, when we were further away than the threat, but because we saw that she could come back. So we were in anticipation, and we acted at the right time and on the right scale. But we will now have to, with our main partners in Europe, take strong decisions to go further. I don't know if 5% is the right number for France, but in any case, we will have to go up, and so yes. We must integrate it with the rest. It's not true that we can do everything. We're going to have to make choices, and that's also why I need you. I found 472 on TikTok who wrote to me, Mr. President, the Ukrainian president still remains legitimate. In view of the current situations, well, yes, you shouldn't buy arguments that I hear everywhere. The president of Ukraine, he was elected by free elections in Ukraine. By the way, this was not the favorite at all. I remember it as it was yesterday. And so he is an elected president of a free system. This is not the case with Vladimir Putin, who has been killing his opponents and manipulating his elections for a long time. Unfortunately, this is not the case in too many countries around the world. Then he had to take, because it was war at home, a martial law. Do you think that he can organize presidential elections or parliamentary elections in a country where several million Ukrainians have fled for their safety? In a country where he has mobilized several million others who are at the front, where there are 1,000 dead and wounded a day, and where there is a whole strip of his territory that is conquered by Russia? What are we talking about? Do you think that we, in the same situation, would have fun making elections? He can't do elections. So if we want free elections in Ukraine, we need lasting peace in Ukraine. This is the prerequisite. Everyone they do before, manipulate. And what is the project of some? I know this very well, a ceasefire that will not be respected. Quickly elections, to manipulate them. That's not a good idea. So yes, President Zelensky, he is legitimate, and we wish for more democracy in Ukraine in the long term. Thanks to a lasting peace. And President Zelensky also wants democracy in Ukraine, since he is the fruit of it. If the system had been manipulated, he would never have been elected president himself. Here, listen, I see the clock ticking, and I'm going to have to finally go back to a video conference with President Zelensky. First of all, I wanted to apologize for the small technical problems we had at the beginning. We'll get better next time. I hope that in any case it was clear and useful. I tried to take as many questions as possible. There were a lot of them. I couldn't answer all of them. There I can still see that they are parading certain questions in front of me. But listen, I'm going to come back and report to you on a regular basis. Here I am talking to President Zelensky. Tomorrow I will talk to other European colleagues again to get my bearings. I will then go to the United States, and then we will continue the maneuver. And then we're going to have to make decisions for us French, for us Europeans. And so I will come back regularly. I will hold press conferences. I will answer journalists' questions on a regular basis, as I am used to, but I also want to be able to answer you in a very direct way as we have just done there. And so if the exercise seemed useful to you, I will do it again on a regular basis like this, without a filter. Because I think it is important. I will be able to report to you, explain to you, answer your criticisms or your questions, and then tell you that we must move forward. In any case, my objective tonight was first of all to tell you that we are at the maneuver, in action to obtain a lasting peace in Ukraine with the Ukrainians, with the Europeans. Secondly, we must all be aware of the threat that Russia represents for Europe and for France, and therefore, that it will impose on us very strong choices for ourselves, for our defense and our security. I tried to explain what that meant, what it meant for us French and for us Europeans. And in this context, in this new era in which we are entering it, I would need you, I would need your commitment, I would need your mobilization. And basically, we need again, in this moment that is beginning, to know how to remake the nation in responsibility, to debate our agreements, our disagreements, but in the end to remain united, strong, and to choose fundamentally the independence of France, the strength of France and the Republic, and the future of the nation above all things. Thank you all. Long live the Republic and long live France.